This is a record meeting. I hope you're fine with it. And this is a meeting dedicated mostly to King's College London UCU members, but it's also
No, I'm just diving into this now.
Sorry?
Someone hadn't muted themselves.
Okay, please keep yourself muted during the meeting if you can, unless you're asking a question. Anyway, so this is mainly for KCL UCU members, but it's also being live streamed on YouTube. And of course, this is a crucial moment for the future of our union and also for the future of the HE sector. And that's why we actually organize these hustings so that members can ask questions to the candidates and can make informed decisions when they vote. And it's very important that we vote and we have a voice on the future of the union. I kindly ask, John, can you let people in? I won't be able to also let people in okay. And just to briefly how this has been organized. So each candidate will give an opening speech for 3 minutes. We will follow an alphabetical order. And then we will have about 45 minutes for Q&A. We collected questions through the registration form, and we will also ask members if they want to ask their questions live during the meeting. But even if you submitted your question through the registration form, we will call you so that you have the chance to ask the question yourself. Unfortunately, Joe Grady can stay only for the first hour because of something unforeseen. And so she will be attending only the first hour. After an hour, we will have a 5-minute break. And then we will continue for, I don't know, we will have in total 60 minutes Q&A. And then at the end, the candidates will have the chance to give a 3-minute closing statement. And after that, we will go home and vote finally. Okay, so our first speaker and candidate is Vicky Blake. Vicky, do you want to start? Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. I'm just going to put my stopwatch on so that I keep to time. Thank you. So thanks so much for organising today and everyone for attending. I've met some of you on pickets, but just in case, I'm Vicky. I work in widening participation at Leeds Uni, where I'm branch secretary and a previous president, and I was UCU VP and then president 2019 to 22. I'm on NEC and I chair UCU's Education Committee and co-chair our Climate and Ecological Emergency Committee, which advises the NEC and supports our Green reps and negotiators bargaining for climate in FE and HE. I'm genuinely independent and I want to bring members together to organise, democratise and unite as a serious and confident union. And my manifesto at vickyblakeUCU.uk brings practical proposals that are both radical and traditional at the same time. A renewed focus on organising, centring branches as our union's fundamental building blocks with adherence to democratic structures, decision-making and accountability. A more horizontal approach facilitated by organising hubs to build on our devolved national and regional structures, expanding in-house research provision to back UK-wide cross-branch and cross-sectoral coordination with analysis to help us secure and build binding sectoral bargaining. Promoting dialogue and deliberation in synchronous and asynchronous spaces and networks, establishing regular meetings and communication channels between regional and devolved committees and between negotiators and members, and improving legal support for potential test cases and establishing a dedicated mechanism to support migrant members who need urgent specialist advice. I'll instigate audits of UCU's emissions and review our use of materials, including single-use plastic, and we'll make equality a practice, tackling structural racism and discrimination head-on in our own structures and organising spaces, embedding excellent hybrid working in our health and safety practices for our staff and our members. And we'll work with our global movement for equity and safety in all workplaces and across our world, including doing all we can to press for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and to support all affected by and fleeing conflict. I believe we can repair relationships inside UCU, and I'll urgently prioritise repairing UCU's relationship with our recognised staff union Unite and with our Black Members Standing Committee. So evidence-based, coordinated organising and dialogue over our differences will drive our pursuit of decent pay and equity in the workplace. And when we take industrial action, this will better equip us to take
Okay. Sorry, you've been muted. Sorry, Vicky. Could you please unmute yourself? Sorry.
Sorry, at what point was I muted?
About embedded equality. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I guess I was probably talking about our, like, the need to tackle racism and discrimination. Would it be about then?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah, so we'll make equality a practice, tackling structural racism and discrimination head on, and that's in our own structures and organising spaces, and also embedding excellent hybrid working and health and safety practices for staff and members. We'll work with our global movement for equity and safety in all workplaces and across our world, including doing all we can to press for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and to support all affected by and fleeing conflict. I believe we can repair relationships inside UCU. I'll urgently prioritise repairing UCU's relationship with our recognised staff union Unite and with our Black Members Standing Committee. And our evidence-based coordinating, organising and dialogue over our differences will drive our pursuit of decent pay and equity in the workplace. And when we take industrial action, this will equip us better to take effective and well-timed action. And we'll identify political and industrial leverage points with members to secure a fairer deal for everyone. My plans come from talking with members across UCU and 15 years experience organising, representing and negotiating for members at every level. And I'll spend every day time with branches, and I will work with members to uphold and improve our union democracy and to improve our legal provision. I want to end by saying you can make a difference in this election, and please encourage everyone to vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vicky. The next candidate is Joe Grady. Thank you, Joe, for being here. And you also have 3 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you. And just wanted to start with an apology because I will have to leave it to a member issue has come up that I can't not attend to. But I did want to start by saying a few things. First of all, thank you for coming along. 3 minutes isn't a long time, so I don't want to read at you from a script. I don't want to spend any of that time attacking anybody. What I want to do is talk positively about what I want to do in a second term. And kind of start with, I think, some reflections. Is UCU perfect? It certainly isn't. And I don't think, I would be wanting to stand in front of you here and say that my leadership has been perfect. But I am going to talk about why I think you should re-elect me as General Secretary. I know we don't have a lot of time to read extra things, given our workloads, but if you go on my website, gradyforgs.com, you will see there is a manifesto there. There are also 2 clear and coherent plans for FE and for HE, clear industrial documents about what we need to do. And the reason I wanted to put them on the website well in advance of the election opening is when you're GS, your voice is sometimes lost. And I wanted to be really clear, as it has been for the past few weeks, and it will be up until the 1st of March when this closes. We do need to change. We need a strategic reset, in my opinion. I think we've got a lot to celebrate as a union, but I think that some changes have to happen. I'm running with a platform of candidates. You can find them on gradyforgs.com platform. It's David Hunter, who is VP. Everyone can vote for him, even though it says FE, and a list of candidates that also want to see a strategic change. So that is mass participation and mass engagement in everything that we do, from ballots and then engagement all the way through to taking action. And I think from what we've seen from the survey of HE members last year, that a lot of members want to see a clear plan as well. If re-elected, I want to move straight into a mass engagement exercise about what the next dispute will look like. I don't want us doing this again after we've had a ballot. But I'll finish on a few things, because I think some people do like to put down our union And yes, there are things we need to learn from, but I think there are things we can be proud of. We have an equalities and an environmental agenda that is some of the best in the movement. We've won back USS. We've delivered UK-wide ballot wins. We stand up for marginalised groups. Our standing in the movement has increased. I want to carry on helping us achieve all of those things. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and the questions, and I will end there before Lucia gets heavy-handed with the mute button. Thanks.
Thank you. I wasn't even looking at the watch, so anyway, thanks so much. Our next candidate is Ewan McGaughey, who I think some of you will know from before. So Ewan, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you to everybody for being here. Thanks for the whole executive at KCL UCU for organising. My name is Ewan McGaughey. Great to see so many familiar names on Zoom. And I'm only sorry that we can't be together in person, but I really appreciate the executive for organising the hustings. So for those of you who don't know me, I work in the law school at King's College London. I specialise in labour relations, anti-discrimination law, regulation of public services. And I've worked my whole life in the labour movement. I've worked many occasions with the International Labour Organisation, the Labour Party in the UK, the Bernie Sanders campaign, a little bit with the Elizabeth Warren campaign in the US in the 2020 election. And of course, I was serving as branch president at KCL UCU from the end of 2020 till 2023. So what I think everybody wants to know in this election is what the candidates are actually going to do to turn around the union and turn around UCU. And we've got to be honest that we are in a big mess. We've had real terms pay cuts over 13% since 2019 alone. Membership is down by over 6,000. Density, it is a low point. And we've got problems with unbelievably structural racism in UCU's own office. UCU, as an employer, was sanctioned by the Health and Safety Executive last year. And so we need to really turn things around. And it's not doing our union down to say that we've got these problems. It's talking about the positive, it's highlighting the difficulties so that we can talk about the positive reasons that we need to change. So what you'll see from me on day one, if you vote, and everybody does really need to vote because turnout is so low in UCU General Secretary elections, is the following. Number one, from the very beginning, I will restore good faith sector-wide collective bargaining and make sure that we get collective agreements at every single workplace in the United Kingdom. Many don't have collective agreements at all, which means no rules about job security that management understands. So that's something that we've got to do straight away. Sector-wide bargaining and then rolling out patterns of bargaining everywhere that we can. Second, we need to place democracy at work at the centre of everything that UCU does. We had a campaign at King's to get more elected people on the council, and we need majority elected governing bodies everywhere in the UK. In Wales, there's a campaign right now, and UCU should be throwing its full weight behind it. We need to undo the structural causes of racism and sexism and ableism. We know that the parental leave, unequal parenting responsibility is one major cause of the gender pay gap. The other main cause is outright discrimination. So we need to really boost our legal department. There's lots more, but time is short, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Wow, Ewan, you had 15 seconds left. Well done. Okay, our next and last candidate is Saira Weiner. Saira, you also have 3 minutes. And thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Saira Weiner. I'm branch secretary at Liverpool John Moores University, and I've had various positions regionally and nationally. You can look at my website, Saira4gs.wordpress.com for more detail. But I think it's really decision time for the UCU at the minute. Do we want a general secretary who tells us what to do, or one who does what members decide? These elections come in a year when we've had, huge industrial disputes in higher education, action in various FE branches, and of course, the public sector strikes, which in some places are still ongoing. And at the same time, we've got a world that's absolutely on fire. We've got a cost of living crisis, which is impacting on our poorest members significantly, the casualised members. And we've got a genocide in Gaza supported by our government and the USS pension scheme and many of our universities and colleges. And I think that despite the magnificent efforts that that ordinary members have made, we haven't done enough, and things can't go on as normal at the moment, I don't think. So we need to win on pay, workloads, casualisations, or other issues, and we need to ask, why is it that we haven't succeeded so far and come up with solutions for all sectors of the UCU, so that our prison educators are safe at work and we win national bargaining in adult education and FE. And of course, I'm equally as concerned about the shocking reports of structural racism and bullying coming from Unite in UCU, as well as other concerns which need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed quickly. I don't think we can fight for equality and trade union rights when we have got these issues going on in our unions. I think at the moment, our members feel disempowered and frustrated. And the key point is that when members make decisions through our democratic structures, UCU leaders must carry them out, not block, delay or undermine them. When we're in dispute, we need strike committees to control our disputes effectively, and branch delegates meeting, etc. And to understand the strength of our union lies in the actions of its members, not in the GS. So it needs to be led from bottom up. I've got lots to say about higher education and, other stuff, but I don't think you change a union simply because you change the General Secretary. Its strength, as I said, lies in the activity of its ordinary members, but I do think it matters who you vote for. When we stand together, we can change the world. And that's what I stand for as General Secretary, and a strategy that can actually win.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. So if that's okay, we will now move to the Q&A part of these hustings. So we have agreed with the candidates that we will ask single questions, and then we'll give them the floor back, and you will have 2 minutes to reply to each question. So we have, I would also encourage, so we have 6 questions in total that we collected through the registration form, and 1 question from the executive. If you would like to ask a question, could you please maybe write in the chat and also indicate what topic your question is about, so that we will make sure that there is a kind of, we cover as many topics as possible. So I will start with the first question, which is a question from the executive of the branch, which is about the MAB and the strategy in 2023, 22-23 actually. What do you make of the decision by headquarters not to implement Congress policy immediately to reballot over the summer to ensure continuity of our MAB mandate? Do you think we could have won the pay and conditions dispute had we had a continuous mandate? Okay, so shall we follow the order, or do you want to follow the inverse order? And we start with Saira. Whatever you prefer. Saira, do you want to go first, and then Ewan goes second, and then Joe, and then Vicky. Okay, so Saira, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks again, Lucia. Yeah, I think this is a crucial question. I believe that when Congress or sector conference makes a decision, that decision must be implemented, and it shouldn't be at the whim of either the General Secretary or the NEC or HEC to change that. Their job is to implement. And, no one by any stretch of their imagination could think that a summer ballot starts in September. I think it seriously affected the MAB. Why continue? And I know you guys did and want some significant gains over it. If you're going to have to start marking again you know, with a gap, and you're going to have to do the work anyway. So I think there are a couple of other issues related to that. I mean, I do think it was quite shocking, the way it all happened. But the other issues related to that would be that I think, you know, we need to look at supporting people doing MAB and other activities financially through the Fighting Fund, and how we're going to build that up so that people can continue doing it. I think it's important that, you know, when we make a plan and say that we're going to be doing it, the branches aren't given the option to opt out. We're a collective organisation. We make collective decisions, and a UK-wide strategy has got to be a UK-wide strategy, and the stronger branches pull along with them the smaller branches. We don't have the lowest, you know, we don't kind of all level down to meet the least confident branches. I think we could have won, and you see all the branches who took MAB action the previous year, I think all but one of them made serious gains out of that, and that should be informative to us. That should be instructive. So I think my key point is that I think it was disastrous, the belatedness of the summer ballot, and we really do need to follow Congress decisions to the T, not change them as we agree, as someone else agrees. Thanks. Sorry, I went over.
It's fine. Thank you. Ewan, your turn. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the question. It's so important. In a nutshell, yes, I do think that it is incredibly important that the union has a live mandate, and this view that comes really from experience in King's itself. I mean, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have good faith bargaining to get a deal, ideally without taking action. But the thing that I learned very slowly and painfully is that, you know, often management won't respond except to pressure. And there's three kinds of pressure that we can exercise as a union. The first is taking industrial action or collective action. The second is taking legal action. And the third is targeted publicity. And what we've got to do very simply is use all three of those tools to the fullest. As I say, try and bargain in good faith. You don't ultimately want to end up having to take strike action in the most sort of severe form, but it does matter that you can exert pressure if needed, and that's so important. And I think taking industrial action was one of the reasons that explained why we managed to do what we did at King's. But I also think it's important to acknowledge that people are exhausted of taking action without getting any results. And so that's why we've just got to have a complete change at national level. We've got to be organized about getting ballots and making sure that we win them when we call them. And if you vote for me, we will win every single ballot, because we'll make simple changes to make sure that we get maximum turnout. But also, especially on the 4 fights, we need to be making sure that we get local gains if it's not happening nationally. So that means driving forward the agenda for equality, getting a deal to raise parental leave, making sure that we undo the structural causes of racism and sexism by making sure that pay practices and promotion practices close the gender pay gaps and raise pay gaps and so on, rather than exacerbating them. And there's lots more to say, but I think my 2 minutes is up.
Thank you, Ewan. Vicky? Oh, no, sorry, Joe, sorry. Yeah, please.
Little mini timeline in the 2 minutes that we've got, because obviously Congress voted not just for a reballot in pay, but for a reballot in USS. The Higher Education Committee, which is one body that can call a ballot, the other are the HE officers, didn't do that in June when they met. When they met again later in the summer, they called one in pay, but not one in USS. And I think that's just important, because I think, you know, there are instances when the HEC decides not to carry out decisions that Congress have made, and I think most people would agree in USS it was the right one. Now, when it comes to the question of the MAB, it has to be recognised how, you know, we're in King's, and I think there's people from other London branches here as well, how people mobilised and the hardship. You know, we know, even if it's just from the union's fighting fund figures, we paid more money out in the last year. In 1 month last year, sorry, we paid out half the union's income in that month. So there is a huge amount that you sacrificed, and the union, I think, paid a role towards that. I think in terms of the marking and assessment boycott, and strategy, if we think about the reject note that we had in April the year before, or May, that if that was a structure test for the MAB, it wasn't the strongest structure test we could have had. And I think that we need to think when we do this again next time, how we have mass engagement in that tactic, so that we don't have some branches that are incredibly organised like yours, but maybe other branches where members are quite like alien and isolated from the process, where there might be just sort of 10 members. So I think that is an issue. I can see I'm running out of time, but I don't think it's all about mandate. I think if we don't have the right strategy, we could have a forever mandate and we won't get where we need to be. Thanks.
Thank you. Vicky.
Thanks. So on forfights, we were divided. Members sacrificed a lot, but were left up in the air. And I think the GS job is to bring us together around strategy, not divide us. And our employers had better intel and better discipline. That's what happened. As soon as they knew there would be a gap in the mandate, they stopped negotiating. So our efforts as members didn't bring the outcome that we deserved from the MAB. And instead, we were faced with sudden, urgent set of marking deadlines, largely without pay. Now, I wrote about this in my blog a little while ago, and I have a look there if you'd like to see more, because it's hard to cover everything. Previously, we have made returning or not making deductions part of our negotiating strategy, but ultimately we have to work through a comprehensive UK level response to hardline employers. They're emboldened now. Branches need to feel confident that they can deal with those bullies and they have the backup, and that means practical support, resources and assistance that goes beyond rhetoric and stunts, and we have to make sure that we have the intel to take well-timed effective action. I'm really interested in a suggestion from Queen Mary UCU for an independent review of the MAB, and I think that could be really useful in tandem with reflecting back on our policy around effective industrial action that we have from 2018. And I think that we should have been ready, and we need to be ready in future. And the increased research provision that I've talked about in my manifesto and more horizontal organising will mean we can be, because we need to better understand the wide range of options we have open to us across all of our leverage, to know what key points of impact and leverage we have in different staff groups. So IT staff, or what about students facing professional services staff, and how these points of leverage fit with something like a MAB. In order to have a coordinated approach, we need to build a full understanding of our term time schedules and the work that we need to do. So to kind of cover everything together, yes, I think that the gap in the mandate massively undermined us, but we were also undermined by the timing of the strategy and lack of intel as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all. And
she's there already?
Sorry, Anna, you're not muted. Can I ask all participants, please, to mute yourselves? I don't know why this is not automatic.
I've just muted her.
You enjoy the interaction? Oh, okay. Anyway, so we have a lot of people in the room. Our next question, actually, John, you have a next question, and then there is a question from a member, Emily Barrett, who is, however, not here. So I asked Antonia. Antonia, can you ask the following question? Okay, John, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Yeah, so the question I have is really in reaction to the statement that got released from UCU yesterday about the disinvestment plan, or the rejection of disinvestment from USS. So just to give you context, our branch passed the Congress motion last year that actually pushed for disinvestment of the USS pension from militarization and also HE. So there's two bits to this. So the first bit of the question is, given that announcement yesterday, are you surprised? Which I guess you're probably going to say no. But if you, if the incumbent General Secretary or next General Secretary, what are the plans to achieve what we passed at Congress, which is the disinvestment of USS from militarization and practices of genocide, like we're seeing live streamed at us for the last few months, and also how you would plan to fulfill that Congress motion by actually demilitarizing HE more generally. So it's both USS and HE. I hope that's clear. Cheers.
Thanks so much. Shall we follow the actual alphabetical order this time? Is it okay? Or you prefer? Yes? Okay, Vicky, are you okay going first?
Yeah, maybe we can give someone in the middle of the alphabet the chance to go first next time, but I'm okay this time.
Okay, so since Joe, you're the current General Secretary, maybe we start from you.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I was surprised, but I think we were a bit disappointed in head office because we have actually been working quite closely with USS to say, look, you took measures in response to what happened with Ukraine. There is nothing different here. If anything, you know, the extent of what we are seeing goes beyond that. And I think we were, you know, not necessarily hopeful, but we were working towards something. For some of them to come out with that, I think is now gloves off territory in terms of what we need to do. So I think one of the things that I say more broadly about industrial strategy is we need more boots on the ground. We need more members because that's our strength, whether it's an industrial action ballot or a campaign. So I think our next steps now have to be to kind of take this, you know, every fight in every branch where we have a USS institution in particular, but also where our institutions are involved in the military complex more broadly. You know, we have a lot of power, I think, in some workplaces, particularly if we join with our students. There is a lot of pressure to bear. The campaigns team in UCU have been putting together, I think, information that certain branches can use already to kind of put that pressure on. But I mean, I have to be honest with you, I think now we know where we stand with USS. I would be really in favour of us hosting a summit, of us power mapping where we've got leverage, and of us really developing tactics that will, you know, shame universities, that will hit them where it hurts. And I think we need to look into potentially legal options, which isn't my normal first go-to, but we've got, you know, the International Court of Justice preliminary ruling. We know that there is a duty to prevent genocide. So I think we kind of have to look at everything really: campaigning, tactics on the ground, name and shame, leverage where we have it, and potentially legal pressure. But I think a summit would be really good to draw attention to.
Thank you. I will call Ewan next. Actually, you're unmuted, Ewan, so maybe you expected that. Then I will call Vicky and finally Saira. Okay.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's incredibly important. And as people will know, if they go to unmg.uk, I've got democracy in two parts of my platform. Firstly, for USS, and then secondly, for every university. So if we want to get USS and all education institutions to demilitarize, and by that I understand, you know, very simple compliance with international human rights law and international law, then we've got to make sure that these institutions are majority elected by us. So for USS, we've got to have the currently 5 self-appointed members of the USS board being elected by us. Currently, there's 3 appointed by UCU, 4 appointed by UUK, 5 by the existing board. And that's why you've got sort of representatives of the city, fossil fuels, you know, big finance, Wall Street, who have been doing sort of business as usual, even though the planet's on fire. Labor rights are consistently under attack through every company that they invest in, and you know the appalling continuation of an anti-human rights, anti-international law agenda that we see. Because we've got to do something, and our work as capital needs to be used according to our interests. Now, the other dimension of this is that we've got to make sure that universities are majority elected, because then we can actually get changes to make sure that our institutions aren't cooperating with dictatorships and states that engage in war crimes, massive human rights abuse. I think that's so important. So we've got to have structural change in order to achieve it. And that is exactly what we will do. We will not just have a summit, we will on day one make sure that this is at the center of everything that UCU does. Perhaps I could just also add, I think it's really important that we couple this together with standards on labour rights, standards on clean energy. And so 100% clean energy, human rights, labour rights is what I stand for.
Thank you, Ewan. Vicky?
Thanks. Yeah, not surprised, but I think we know with USS that you don't give up the first time that something doesn't go the way that we want. That is one lesson we've clearly learned. So we have to keep going, and we have to keep going with our employers as well. I think that we need to do some stronger work and get our legal advice revisited around BDS in light of the recent ICJ judgment. I think that could and certainly should affect the progress of the economic activity bill. And I think that in terms of divestment, we need to be talking about disinvesting or divesting from the military complex and in relation to fossil fuels. So also talking about pursuing a just transition. We need to push every possible lever socially, politically, industrially, where we can. And we need to hold USS to account by asking them to provide evidence of their voting records, because they say their preference is to use their influence as a shareholder. And they say that's one of the most effective ways to bring about change. So if that's what they're saying, we want to see their voting records. We want to be able to hold them to account more broadly. And we are doing work, I know, through our negotiation team on that. But I think getting more information about that to our members is really important, including those members who are in the DC part of the scheme, where they can exercise some choice about where they invest the money that's in that section. We've all written answers in quite a lot of detail on the Divest USS website as well. So I'll just finish by saying for all of the candidates, you can see more about what we've had to say about that. I think it's divestuss.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Saira.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that USS and their shareholders have no moral background, but I do think there's a lack of urgency in some of the answers I've heard before. Genocide is going on at this very moment in Gaza. It's got to the state where even Keir Starmer is calling for a ceasefire. So, I think that what we need to be doing is immediately calling demonstrations outside USS, having protests, writing to every VC and college principal, telling them that the expectation is of them to stop any engagement immediately with the military and anything involved in the genocide at the moment. And a point of example of this, I'm really proud of my branch today, as there's a jobs fair tomorrow where BAE and HPE, both complicit in Israeli war crimes, were supposed to be attending. And because we organised a protest of students, of members in our university and in other universities and the community, we were told today that neither HPE or BAE will be attending. And it's that sort of direct action that I believe can make an immediate difference. And of course, I agree with long-term strategies for divestment in terms of fossil fuels, etc., like that, longer-term fuels. Schemes, but there is a real urgency at the moment, and I don't think that we can wait to kind of gently persuade or change rules. And people who say that we will get this, we will get that, the question is how. That's my question in all of this. How are we going to do that? And it's not through writing letters, I fear. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Saira. Okay, so our next question is from Emily Barrett, who I don't think is here right now. So Antonia will read the question, and then I think I will start with Ewan, actually.
Okay, so the question from Emily Barrett is, please could you explain what you think structural inequality is, brackets gender, and how is a commitment to addressing structural inequality consistent with the objective of improved parental leave ahead of the pursuit of better maternity leave?
Thank you. Ewan, you have 2 minutes. No, Jo?
Can I just ask you to write that down in the chat if possible, because I was listening, but it's got several parts and I got a bit lost, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Antonia, could you do it? I have some issues with the copy and paste on Zoom. Okay, thanks so much. Ewan, you have 2 minutes.
Great, and it's a really, really important question. And having taught anti-discrimination for most of my adult career, I feel very deeply that what we've got to do as a union is make sure that we're not only enforcing people's existing legal rights, but we're changing the structures that generate inequality, sexism, racism, ableism, and so on. So what I mean by structural inequality are the governance norms, the market practices, which lead to, for instance, the gender pay gap, the race pay gap, and so forth. And so what I promise to do is make sure that we start to undo the structural causes of discrimination, not just, although this is very important, but not only defending everybody's rights, making sure that we change the structures. So the Diversity Council of Australia put out a very good paper a couple of years ago saying that the gender pay gap has three main causes. 39% is attributable to unequal parenting responsibility. And the next biggest cause is outright discrimination. So people being not promoted or not hired fairly. And the third cause was occupational segregation. So we know that the biggest thing that we could do is make sure that we raise and equalize paid parental leave for everyone. I'm saying at least 26 weeks. I'd like to see us like UNICEF UK as one of the best employers going to 52 weeks, but we've got to have a baseline to raise and equalize parental leave. Secondly, we've got to defend everybody's rights. And the third big thing, which also cuts across the race pay gap and the disability pay gap, is we've got to make sure that new hiring, promotion and pay practices contribute to decreasing the pay gaps, not exacerbating them. So if you've got a faculty or a university with a big pay gap, then it's got to show that new hires and promotions contribute to lowering the pay gap. So that's what I mean. And I think that it's incredibly important that UCU starts pushing forward this agenda in every single university as well as nationally.
Thank you, Ewan. Saira, is it okay if you go next, then Vicky, and finally Joe?
Yeah, okay. So the causes of structural inequality for women, I believe are, embedded within society, embedded within capitalist society, where the family is seen as the people, people have to, grow the next workforce generally. And I think, increased provision of creche and nursery stuff is really important. And I think that maternity leave does need to be extended. I'm not entirely sure about what enforcing shared parental leave will do. I mean, most women earn less than men in society. And if a family decide that the best person to take that leave is for the woman who earns less, or because they choose that, then I think that's exactly the choice that they should make. I don't think you can change the structural causes by forcing people to share parental leave in any way, shape or form. It's for parents to decide. So I think we need a general fight against sexism, structural sexism, which is embedded. We need to fight for equal pay across our sector, but everywhere else as well. And I think it's much more complicated. And in many ways, unites all women in order to fight for this. If we talk much more about getting rid of the structural stuff rather than issues such as who takes parental leave. We need we've got 26 weeks at our place. We negotiated it. And of course, we want to push it further and further and further, so that if it's expected, if people haven't got creches or are able to go back to work, etc., then, that they can, decide who is going to care and if it's shared or not themselves. Sorry, yeah, that might have been a bit fuddled.
That was clear. Thank you, Saira. Vicky.
Thank you. So I think that structural inequality is baked into our governance, yes, but it's also in our social norms and the norms in our organisations. So challenging structural inequality means challenging ourselves as well, challenging our assumptions, and it will mean challenging our own unions' practices. It can manifest in workplace policies, and I agree that we need to both raise and equalise parental leave for all families, for all configurations of families. And we need to make it a right for all staff groups, because at the moment, not every staff group has access to that kind of contractual leave. For example, it's not fully accessible to migrant members, including PGRs. So we need a campaign with significant resources to tackle this. And I want to squeeze in that we need to also be talking about carers leave of all kinds. We don't only care for children. There is a need to care often for elderly relatives and disabled dependents. And that needs to be factored into what we're doing as well. So this structural inequality, trying to cover it very, very quickly, manifests and drives intersecting pay gaps and limits opportunities for career development. And so we also need to be looking at that in the round, and that includes flexible working policies as well. Thanks.
Wow, that was quick. Thank you, Vicky. Jo.
Thank you. In terms of what structural inequality is, obviously, in terms of gender, is an equality that mainly pertains to women. But I think it's worth pointing out, obviously, that there are intersections as to how that then plays out. I think the thing that's probably most relevant to this question is whether we want to kind of like it or not, the bulk of reproductive labour is done by women. And I think, that there's a huge issue in higher education where if we look at who is most likely to be on insecure contracts and you look at the intersection of gender and other protected characteristics, you will find women in those roles. So I think it is a huge issue. I think if we're looking at better maternity leave, we need to be looking at who gets access to that. Do they get access to it from day one? Do they have to have been here for a while? What about people who are on those casualised contracts? And I think it is really important that we make sure that maternity leave is as good and as tight and as all-encompassing as it can be, because we know that the way in which society is structured, women carry a double, if not a triple workload. So I don't know what debate the question kind of alludes to, but I do think that that is something that needs addressing. And I am obviously a fan of parental leave. I think if you look at the paternity leave, for a lot of fathers, it's not enough. But I think we do need to think about how we protect mothers and extend it for mothers. I remember talking to one of our members on a picket line. She had to go back to work after 3 weeks because she was on a casualised contract and couldn't get any kind of maternity extension. And we really need to prioritise how we address maternity leave, parental leave as well, and how that extends to intersectional groups and issues.
Well, thanks a lot. I think it's a good thing we won parental leave rights from day one here at King's. So even precarious members have parental leave rights from day one. Maybe something the union nationally could follow. Anyway, so it's 1:52. Is it okay if we collect another question and then we will ask Jo to reply first if you need to leave at some point, and then we will have our break? Is it a good plan? Yeah? Okay, great. Pete, do you want to ask the question? And please introduce yourself. So sorry, I didn't say it earlier.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. Pete Chonker, Deputy Chair, KCL UCU. I wanted to ask a question to all of the candidates about issues that have been sort of alluded to in some of the opening speeches about UCU as a workplace in itself. So, there have been recent reports from Unite UCU that disputes over pay and health and safety, union recognition and equality issues have reached quote unquote crisis point. We've also had statements from elected members of UCU as Black Member Standing Committee criticising what they've called entrenched racism and systemic disrespect within UCU, for instance, in relation to alleged censorship of Palestine solidarity statements last year. Most candidates have called for an independent inquiry on these issues, but what do the candidates think UCU should be doing to deal with these substantive issues raised by Unite UCU and the UCU Black Member Standing Committee? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Jo, you go first. Okay.
Not sure I can get through all that in 2 minutes, but I do want to say a number of things. Obviously, we've just been talking about structural inequalities. They're deeply embedded. not just in workplaces, but also in, UCU's own as an employer. In the last year, we've done an equality pay gap audit, and we conducted some listening circles for Black staff. And as you've rightly outlined, we found that Black staff feel undervalued, discouraged, excluded, and in some cases unable to approach or challenge their colleagues or their managers. So in terms of as an employer, we have already put steps in place on some aspects in terms of changing our recruitment procedures, how we develop staff, setting targets to ensure that we close those gaps and encourage more applications from underrepresented groups and allow them to progress more. We have an action plan which includes further anti-racism training for all staff, particularly for managers, as well as safe reporting mechanisms. There's more I could say on the Black staff member standing committee, which we'll be hopefully tackling in an NEC next month. But we are bringing in the TUC to do an external and independent review on the issues that they've concerned. And I'll just finish because I think it's probably important to be upfront. The UCU pay offer, which obviously hasn't been accepted yet, and may not be, it does include an 8.5% in-year increase in salary and a 10.8% increase for London allowance and a maximum of a non-consolidated payment of £3,600 for full-time staff and no payments being offered to any senior managers. So there are issues. I'm not going to try and shy away and pretend there aren't, but we are addressing them. And I think in terms of what we're offering our staff on pay, we are proud of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And in case you need to leave before the break, thanks so much for coming today and making the time for this Hustings. Ewan, do you want to go next? And then I will call Saira and finally Vicky this time.
Sure. So this is such an important question, Pete. Thanks for asking. And lots of people will have seen the incumbent General Secretary's mail just before this Hustings about the issue on structural racism and what the Times Higher Education supplement reported as being the culture of fear at the UCU workplace. So here's what I will do. We will be the best employer in the UK. At UCU itself. There are about 240 staff, and everybody there deserves dignity, respect, and to be treated with the dignity that they need to do the job that they do already so well, but even better for us to win in collective bargaining right across the country. We need to be a model for every other university and college in the UK. And that means having the best pay practices, no question whatsoever of structural racism. I mean, it's just unbelievable that it's gotten this far. No question whatsoever that the Health and Safety Executive could be sanctioning the UCUs at the workplace. This will never, ever, ever happen. And I think that it's important to say a little bit more about pay. When we managed to get the USS pension back, that meant that employee and employer contributions to USS could be reduced. And initially, I don't know about the latest rounds of bargaining, but it meant that 7.1% in employer contributions could be reduced, and employers have a chance and a choice about whether to pass that on. UCU, as I understand, initially was saying, we'll take 3.6%, we'll give you 3.5%, but we'll withhold the other 3.6%, which, for a £50,000 earner, for example, would mean £1,800 less that the employer takes, but not the staff. And I think that we need to pass all of the USS contributions on to staff so that we set an example right around the country. On parental leave as well.
Sorry, excuse me.
Is that 2 minutes?
Yeah,
okay,
it's
great.
Over 2 minutes. Thank you, Ewan. Saira, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these issues have been going on within UCU for a long time. I do know that there were complaints and concerns about racism, health and safety, bullying, etc., which have been going on for some months. And it is of concern to me that until this blew up in the press, there hadn't been an adequate response from the GS who is ultimately responsible for these things, and that it's the media that has forced them to make the statement that they did today. There are serious concerns about whether the Unite recognition agreement is being followed adequately. And again, I believe there have been delays and, we haven't got time to meet kind of responses for months and months and months. I don't think that's an acceptable way to treat staff, and we do need to model the best behaviour in the sector. I also know there were 16 health and safety concerns or risks which the UCU have accepted or acknowledged are there. I want to know what's been done about all of them, including bullying and harassment. And my brain's gone a bit blank. And also I believe the pay increase offered includes that 3.6% of the USS contribution payback, if you like. So that's not really the percentage pay increase that the General Secretary has stated it is. It's significantly less than that. And I know the UCU Unite, as the recognised trade union, were very, very concerned about the recognition of management trade union within the UCU without, I believe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see people want to talk a lot about this point. Vicky, you are the last one.
Thank you. So UCU has to model the approach to industrial relations that we promote and the approach to equality and equity in the workplace that we promote. So that means making permanency the norm, respecting our outward-facing policy on contract length, and acting to do the work that clearly needs to be done in terms of equalities. And I note the motions that were passed at Unite's meeting that were put online ahead of the piece in the Times Hire that we saw. And it's very worrying that these listening circles, I think, were conducted in 2022, and we're now in 2024. So I was one of the NEC members who called for an extra special NEC and an independent inquiry, and I'm glad that we will have both of those. I think it's imperative that Unite and the UCU Black Members Standing Committee are involved fully in those, that it's transparent and that they have a right to reply in those spaces. And I think that it has to be transparent throughout, with a full ability of those to ask questions throughout that review. It's the case that a GS, I think, has to set an example in managing staff and interacting with members. And there's an obvious urgent need here to repair relationships within our union. And that means listening exercises can't just be ends in themselves. We have to have action and respectful, proper, meaningful engagement that leads directly to that action, that makes it very, very clear that wholesale changes will be made. And so whoever succeeds in this election, and I mean not just the General Secretary, but all the elections, it's imperative that we tackle these issues head on within our union. And we won't be able to tackle them in our workplaces if we don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So I would just thanks again, Joe, for coming today. And we will have a 5 minutes break, which means we will start again around 2:08. Okay. And yeah, see you soon, and bye. Hi, John.
Hello, Lucia. We're back.
Are the
Rebecca,
candidates back?
candidates aren't back. They might have run off.
Oh, actually, I forgot to take a glass of water. So maybe do we need another minute or hi?
Give everyone a minute. Apparently, Ewan wasn't on mute. I don't know what he said.
Hi. Okay, so it's only the three of you now. So I just wanted to ask you a question. So we have received some questions in the chat, some privately, because some members want to remain anonymous. We have 5 questions in total, which should be around 30-35 minutes. Are you okay with basically discussing the 5 questions and then having the closing remarks? Or you prefer 4 questions, which should be around 30 minutes?
I mean, short and sweet might be good, but I mean, I'm happy to do what everyone wants. What do you reckon, Vicky?
We've got another hustings at, is it, I'm just trying to think, is it 4? So
It's at 4, but we've been time to prepare and all that.
yeah, so I think we should finish. Why don't we do however many questions we can do and then leave enough time for the closing statements?
And
We could
finish
also do
by-
shorter responses. Beg your pardon.
Or finish by 3. I mean, for sure, we finish by 3. Are you okay with that? Yeah.
That's
okay.
fine by me.
Okay.
Thank you for
Okay.
asking me as well, Ewan.
Oh, sorry, I thought you already answered.
No.
It's okay. Okay then. I'll read this question we received in the chat from a member who prefers to remain anonymous. Given the precarious nature of FTC, and hourly paid lecturers, we are completely underrepresented in UCU organizational structure, and their needs often overlooked when those in permanent employment are discussing union-related issues. As such, the term casualization is turning into a campaign buzzword and not resulting in action. As it stands, there is no redeployment policy in place at King's to support those who are casualized in their progress to permanency. To specifically address this, what will you do to ensure university define clear and fair redeployment policies when those stipulated on the UCU website are not considered legitimate by hiring managers or members of HR? Okay, I see, John, are you pasting this in the chat so that, okay. Vicky, is it okay if I call you first? Okay, so I will call you first, then Ewan, then Saira, and then Ewan. Okay, please.
Okay, 2 minutes, yikes. So I've lived it. I cut my teeth as a PGR activist and I know how hard it is, and I absolutely am dedicated to anti-cas representation and to action. I think there is a lot we can do, and what I want to do is to launch a UCU-wide whole union job security campaign. And the idea there is to bring members' ideas and best practice together, and for it to empower our branch officers and activists and increase our number of casualised reps, including PGR reps, to develop and lead our campaign from the ground up. So to bring that experience together and to have access to specialist advice and organising support where it's needed. And the organising hubs model that I've described in my manifesto will support this, and it will make it more efficient for us to use our resources. This will be in tandem with a UCU-wide facilities time campaign to try to increase our capacity for doing this work. And in terms of redeployment policies, I'm shocked that there isn't a decent redeployment policy at King's, and I'd like to know more about that. We are doing a lot of work at my own branch, Leeds, at the moment in this regard. Including trying to safeguard people who are offered roles that aren't quite the right fit for them, but also to move into a situation where permanency is the norm. So you're not scrabbling around looking for funds. I think that bridging funding can be a help in this situation, but ultimately we want the relationship, the employment relationship, to be with the staff member and the project funding to be considered separately. And there's been a really good agreement at Bath University that started to do this, and it's going to function effectively as a pilot. And I would like us all to be able to come together to discuss how they have reached that agreement, but also to monitor how it works. And I'll finish by saying that we need to embed this approach in our national claims as well as in our local ones. It has to be mutually reinforcing. So much more I could say. 2 minutes is not long enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Saira, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nub of this question is how do we actually enforce any decisions that we're made? And unfortunately, we're in a situation where no one is going to give us anything without fighting. You know, we've seen the intransigent and belligerent attitude of our employers when we've tried to fight, kind of persuade them that the best thing to do is this, that, and the other. And, we are seeing an increasing gig economy within higher education and FE as well, and ACE and the other sectors. I think it's absolutely crucial that it is aligned within the 4 fights. As far as I was concerned, the dispute isn't over yet. And I think there are plans to, disjoin them, if that makes, to separate them, which I doesn't think do any help for our most vulnerable and poorly paid casualised or all casualised members. I said, unfortunately, we're not in a situation, I think, that without taking industrial action of some sort, that we're going to win anything. And, I do think that we need to have a look at how the standing committees, including the casualised members standing committee, actually can be become part of the process during negotiations. I'm not quite sure how that will happen, but it's something we need to work on urgently so that, casualised members don't feel abandoned and left on their own. I agree, with all the ideas that Vicky has given, and they're great ideas, but we do need to back that up with some industrial might. And, we're in the union as a collective, and we need to respond as a collective.
Thank you, Saira. Ewan.
It's such an important question, and I pretty much agree with almost everything that Vicky and Saira have just said. Let me just run through a few points. And by the way, I should say I've had casual jobs since I was age 14, applying for my own job again and again when I started academia year on year, not being paid, not knowing how you can afford the rent and the bills, and that's why I think it's just incredibly important that the union gets its act together and actually make sure that we do have not just anti-casualisation as a buzzword, but a progressive agenda for collective bargaining. So at King's, I mean, 2 things. What we found is what we got is that the standard should be 2-year fixed-term contracts as a minimum, and then when you do 2 of those, the law says that at 4 years you should have a permanent contract. But what we saw again and again and again is that people were being fired when they got to the point where they were getting to the 4 years. And even worse, we had 4 cases, 2 with union members, 2 outside the union, where women who applied for maternity leave, who were on fixed-term contracts, were told that they were redundant when they were going to get back. And we fought and we filed tribunal claims and we made sure that they got their jobs back. And the union centrally is not doing anything to help people like this up and down the country. And that's why I say, again, going back to parental leave and why it's so important for the gender pay gap that we have structural reform, because if we have a continuation of unequal childcare and responsibility, we're going to have more and more discrimination like that. We've got to have a legal department that's active at UCU. That's the #1 way. And I agree with all the other ideas about what happens at Bath, and we need pattern bargaining across the UK to get agreements in every university and college where we can.
Thank you, Ewan. And sorry, I lost track. Who's next? Or we okay.
It's the next question, Lucia.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that, because we're
time.
receiving a few questions from our members. So I was trying to rearrange the Q&A settings. Is it okay to have 1.5 minutes to respond so we can ask all the 5 questions that came in? Okay, so I'm going to ask the next one. Sorry about that. Okay, from another member. Do you think that British support for the State of Israel is a threat to academic freedom in the UK, and what can we do about it? Who wants to go first on this? Saira, then Vicky and Ewan. Okay.
Before we start, could you put the question somewhere that we could see it, please? Is it
Yes.
in the...
Yes, John, thank you. Okay, Saira, 1.5 minutes, yeah? Okay,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what we're seeing at the moment is, a narrative around the genocide, that it's somehow, there's an equation between the Hamas attacks and the genocide being being conducted by Israel. And, I think that it's really important that not only do we continue, and I think the UCU nationally has been good on this, making statements, etc., but we need to get materials to branches, we need to get practical support for anybody who is threatened on campus, and we need to overturn this atmosphere of fear. And again, we do that in a collective way. I'd like the General Secretary to be writing to every single university chancellor, every single principal in colleges, saying it is absolutely not acceptable, and we will throw the full weight of the union behind anybody who is being picked on at the moment, and their right to freedom of speech on this being cut off. I think all materials should be sent to branches as well, and members need active encouragement to stand up and speak out.
thank you, Saira. Vicky?
Yeah, thanks. So the question about academic freedom, I mean, academic freedom is already in a state. We have a few years ago submitted a complaint to UNESCO about the restrictions to academic freedom in the UK. And I think recently we have seen that intensify. We have a really serious need to support urgently and quickly members who end up being put at risk, and we've seen this in terms of maybe questions over their employment, but also in terms of their visa status, for speaking out on what is happening in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories more generally. So yes, I think there is a real issue here with respect to academic freedom. We have got ourselves into a position where the advice that we've received about BDS is, we're told it means it's unimplementable. I think we need more renewed advice, as I was saying earlier, to kind of interrogate how we can combat that and how we can proceed. But in terms of the union work that we do to defend academic freedom, we need to be able to support our members. And I think it will take more than a live webinar or some Twitter activity to do that. I think we have to be ready with really specialist support and legal advice for members who are put in that position. And they need to be centred in that. I don't want to speak about individuals, but I think it's very important that the union remembers we have a duty of care to our members, including those who, for example, might make the decision to boycott activity connected to certain types of funding, for example, funding that might be around the military complex or that goes to particular institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ewan, you're last this time.
I think that British support for the State of Israel and academic freedom are two separate things, but I'll try to take both of them in turn, starting with academic freedom. So we've got to be a union that encompasses, or there's a place and a space which can cover people who have widely divergent views and often conflicting views. Part of union democracy is the reconciliation of people who disagree in order to get results for our members and try and change society around us. And what academic freedom means is not just freedom for views that we agree with, but also views that we don't agree with. And that's incredibly important. If we look at the European Convention on Human Rights and provisions on Article 9, and we've got cases coming up all over the place in the UK in the last couple of months, which I'm sure many people have heard of here. Freedom of belief covers even views that shock, offend, and disturb. So not just ones that we don't like, but we've got to be accommodating for views that we don't like too, and I think that's incredibly important at a time of international conflict. And as I've said before, I mean, we've got to be a union that is pro-human rights and pro-international law everywhere, and that's the best way I think that we can keep our union together and make sure that we are upholding the values that we believe in as an international labour movement.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, in the spirit of academic freedom and protecting also those I don't agree with, I'm going to ask this question from Hannah Quirk for all candidates. If elected General Secretary, what policies would you put in place to ensure that no academic faces bullying or harassment for expressing lawful arguments in accordance with the Phoenix versus Open University decision? Which, okay. So who wants to start? Maybe our lawyer here in the room, Ewan, and then I'll call Saira and Vicky.
Okay, so thank you for the question. I think it's really important. And for those of you who don't know, the Joe Phoenix case was about a staff member at the Open University who succeeded in a tribunal claim for violation of freedom of belief and expression of beliefs, and won a constructive unfair dismissal claim for being bullied and harassed. Professor Phoenix believes that a man that's a man and a woman is a woman, and this caused a lot of problems with her colleagues who thought that this was, an anti-transgender position. So I think that this is connected to the last question, that we've got to be a union, and we've got to have workplaces that tolerate even views that we don't agree with. So I don't agree with Professor Phoenix's views on biology. I think that's just factually mistaken with respect to her. I also don't agree with her views on prison reform. But at the same time, I don't think that it's okay for anybody to be harassed and bullied at work. That there's a division between inappropriate and appropriate expression of beliefs. And so what happened in her case was inappropriate expression, and it was the employer that failed, but also the union failed by making sure that the conflict hadn't been resolved way before it got to tribunal.
Okay, thank you. Saira, you go next. I think you're mute. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I am against employers bullying anybody, but I'm absolutely support the right for people to protest and argue with views which deny them the right to exist. And I think, while I, think that people should be allowed to, debate and discuss, I think, we have to look to protecting our most oppressed groups in society. And I always stand firmly on the side of the oppressed. I don't know whether Joe was actually in the UCU at the time, to be honest, because Joe Phoenix, that is, because a lot of as they call them, gender critical educators have left the union because they think it's the most important thing in the world and they don't agree with union policy. That's not what collective decision making and debating is. So I actually defend the right of all trans members of any academic community and elsewhere, the right to decide who they are without being made to feel unwelcome or bullied by anyone else. And I think that is my line on it. And actually, we'll also say sometimes the law is wrong. And when the law is wrong, as in BDS, for example, we should break it.
Thank you. Thank you, Saira. Vicky.
So I'm very aware of the fundamental importance of academic freedom and the fundamental importance of recognizing that freedom Academic freedom and freedom of speech come with responsibilities to respect the democratic rights and freedoms of everyone. And that principle actually underlies our rules, I think it's 6.1, which specifically prohibits harassment and discrimination of all forms. It's part of the General Secretary's responsibility to uphold and enforce that rule and to ensure due process. Now, I'm a committed LGBT+ ally, and I believe that trans rights are human rights. I've always voted for and supported progressive UCU policy aimed at liberating trans and non-binary people. And I think that to answer the question, basically, as General Secretary, I will continue to support and advocate for the liberation of trans and non-binary people and all minoritized groups. I will work with elected committees and our wider membership to establish good faith discussions and spaces that can hold those that support freedom of speech while protecting members' rights to be free of discrimination and to ensure that that due process is followed. It's important, I think, to note there's a distinction between the right to hold a belief and the right to act upon it, and that the courts have reaffirmed that it remains illegal to discriminate against transgender people in the workplace under the Equality Act. In terms of the judgment, it was considered in terms of academic freedom in relation to Joe Phoenix's work and the establishment of a gender critical network, and whether responses to that, critical responses, were also exercises of academic freedom. Most of the decision making was around distinguishing what was harassment. Sorry, I thought we had 2 minutes.
No, we are back to 1:30, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I just
Do
wanted
you want to finish the sentence? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. So the end of my sentence is basically the judgment to me illustrates that OU management and HR appeared to have been very absent at key moments and were found not to have addressed things properly at all. So that wasn't in anyone's interests. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, now we have a question from Alan Simpson. Do you want to read your question, Alan, or shall we? Okay,
Yes,
go
yes,
ahead,
please. I
please.
can ask it. Yeah. Thanks for calling me. First of all, I want to thank all 4 candidates for coming along today. I appreciate you giving up your time for this, and also for standing. These jobs are very much thankless and difficult posts, and so thank you for standing. My question is for anyone aiming to sort of be the figurehead for a union is you're often faced with an NEC which includes different political groupings or parties or whatever who might have quite different views for the plans that you've been voted in on. And I just wonder how you view that and how you might deal with that if elected.
Thank you. Do we need to post the question to make sure everyone?
It was in the chat, but like a while back in the chat.
Yeah, so I'm posting it now. Don't worry, John. I found it. Here it is. Okay, who wants to go first? Sarah? Okay, Sarah, Vicky, and Ewan.
I think that debates, disagreements, and discussions are the absolute lifeblood of any trade union or any democratic society. And of course, there are going to be differences of opinion. However, I think the role of the NEC, the HEC, the FEC are to carry out the decisions made by Congress and sector conferences. And whatever decisions, whatever a decision, if they don't do that, then that's where a problem's going to be, and that's a problem of democracy in the union, rather than about different subgroups. So, I'm happy to work with anyone and everyone. There's some things we may agree on and some things we might not agree on. But the primary importance of these bodies is to ensure that I carry out, if GS, what the democratic bodies have decided, and B, ensure that they implement what the democratic bodies have decided. So I can't see that there's any conflict. I'm happy to argue, debate, discuss with everybody in as friendly a manner as possible, or collegiate as a manner as possible, but as long as the democratic will of members is carried out, there will not be a problem, and by doing that, we'll ensure that every member is represented. So I think by abiding by democracy is the way to deal with that.
Thank you. Vicky?
Thanks. So I really believe our diversity of views is a strength in UCU. It's not a weakness, and the role of the General Secretary is to work with whoever our members elect. I'm standing as an independent. I've always been keen to work with everyone, and I'm interested in issues, not labels. I work with people across the spectrum of political opinion and factions in the interest of our collective aims. And I think that it's important that we remember a GS, you're not electing someone who is like a VC or a principal. They're not a dictator. Unions need to be spaces where disagreement, debate are acknowledged. They're essential to meaningful democracy, and they're integral to arriving at strong positions. I actually wouldn't want an NEC that agreed with me on everything. I think that would be weird. I think we need an NEC and we need wider bodies that are given time, space, and information to arrive at decisions that serve and reflect the interest of members. And the job of the GS is then to implement and champion them. So my approach is to work to create a culture where everyone's views are valued and we can move forward together. And I know we can do it because it's how we've worked on other things. It's how we worked to make anti-casualisation a core element of our work. It's how the Migrant Members Standing Committee was established. And it's not easy, and we do all have a responsibility to work together in that. But I will always endeavour to reach either a consensus position or a position that everyone can live with. It's not always possible, but it is always 100% worth the effort, and we cannot stand another 5 years of heightened conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And Ewan?
Yes, I agree again with a lot of what Vicky and Saira have just said. You know, there's a saying that the arguments are the biggest when the stakes are the lowest, and in UCU sometimes, just occasionally, that's been the case in the past. And I don't think it should distract from the actual great agreement that a lot of UCU members have across the board, even despite all the infighting between the General Secretary and the NEC amongst itself. So we all want to see fair pay, equality, security, democracy. Some people waver. But when we're united around a positive agenda, we have a clear national strategy, and also, again, a strategy for pressing ahead gains at every single branch that we can, then that leaves just frankly less time for the disagreements and disputes to break out. But I absolutely agree that it's not the job of the General Secretary to, try and rewrite what's been decided. If a strike ballot has been called, you don't delay on when the strike ballot is done. You don't delay on the calling of the ballot and the taking of action. What you do is you, as General Secretary, make sure that you get in and negotiate as fast as possible, and also have the machinery of the union working properly so that you don't lose ballots in the first place. So what I do is a lot less Twitter and a lot more good faith collective bargaining.
Thank you, Ewan. We will ask 2 more questions. So sorry, Sam, we can't ask your question. There is not enough time also for the final remarks. John, do you want to ask the question, please?
Yeah, this is coming from a member. I'm just going to put it in the chat. And the question is, what would your approach to negotiations on pay and equalities be? What would the red lines, what should be your red lines? Sorry, they've written it in wrong. Your red lines to start a ballot. In what circumstances does it make sense to accept an opening offer? I'll just pop this in the chat so you can have a look at it.
Okay, who wants to start? Vicky, do you want to start this time? Okay.
Wish me luck in 90 seconds. So the first thing to say is the red lines are for members to decide, and it's the GS's job to support and implement policy. And that means supporting negotiators to do the best they can, which means supporting negotiators to have as much information and much intel as they can, but also I think it's really important we establish channels of direct communication between negotiators and members that we don't really have in the same way at the moment. And that we also introduce, or reintroduce rather, because they seem to have disappeared, some of our ratification processes that make sure that we do keep a decent level of standards up. That said, there was another part to that question, which was, when is it appropriate to accept an opening offer? I mean, the only time I can think that would be appropriate is if the employers rocked up and said, yes, brilliant ideas, we'll do everything you said, awesome. I think other than that, you have to take it as a starting position to win the very best possible for members across all of the heads of claim. I'll stop there because I can see you itching to tell me to be quiet. I think that must be my 90 seconds. Thank you.
No, you have 30 seconds more.
Oh, right. Okay. In which case, I will just finish by saying I don't think members are interested in setting records for winning ballots. We need results on better pay and conditions. And for that, we have to understand that forfeits means commitment to tackling these in the round, allowing negotiators enough room to extract progress from employers and have that sound industrial strategy backing them. And we have to remain committed to collective sectoral bargaining and coordinating effectively to make sure that that's implemented as well. So priority to facilitate good discussions that reinforce all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ewan?
Okay, there's a lot there, but so let me start with pay. I guess it depends on how good the opening offer is, but obviously you don't accept an opening offer. You negotiate to try and get the best offer possible, and I don't think that it's useful to sort of set down red lines in advance. I think that some of what Vicky said is right, that ultimately offers come back to members, and it's for members to decide what to do. But I also think that this is really important, and this is what we've got to start talking about seriously. There was one point on pay when we were saying that we would want £2,500 on the pay spine, when, if you look back to 2009, we've got about 20% real terms pay cuts. So £11,000 less for a starting lecturer. And if you're a senior lecturer, higher, then it's more. If you're below on the salary spine, a bit less. But that's the long-term objective that we've got to have. And what happened in 2009 is that we stopped doing multi-year pay deals. In fact, when UCU was founded, it's been a terrible sort of cycle of every year another little pay cut. So we've got to change that. On equalities, so paid parental leave, structural reform, hiring promotion, and pay practices, and boosting the legal department are the three biggest ways that we can have real action on equality. And we need to do it at every university as well as nationally.
Thank you, Ewan. Saira?
Yeah, I agree with, what Vicky says, really, in terms of, first of all, it's not for the General Secretary to decide when an offer is good enough or when to pause a dispute or not. It's for the negotiators to initially take a view, and then the negotiators to take it to members or the Higher Education Committee or other sector committee to decide whether it actually goes out to members or not. I think that we need to keep the idea, we need to keep the pay inequalities stuff together. And, again, if there's any move from that, it's our members we need to ask through our branches, through strike committees, which will have ultimate control of the disputes. The people who are fighting should be the one who ultimately make those decisions on whether to pause a dispute or and accept a pay offer which is before our, which is different to our initial demands. But yeah, again, it's the only time that we would go, okay, we're going to accept that, is if they fully agree to everything that we say. Otherwise, I mean, my red line is democracy. My red line is, doing what members tell me to do and not imposing anything myself, whether it be pauses, delayed ballots, or anything else. So the role of the General Secretary is to really carry out the will and the mandate of members.
Thank you so much, everyone. So our last question will be asked by Alex Vukovic, who is our Equalities Officer. Alex, do you want to ask?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if I'm coming up on the screen. Here I am. Hi, everyone. So the question is, what are candidates' plans to tackle the grave inequalities faced by migrant members of UCU? Do you have a plan to oppose the rampant and racist anti-immigrant policies of the UK government, especially considering their recent targeting of postgrad students?
Is it okay if we start with Saira, Vicky, and Ewan? Saira, do you want to go first?
Yeah, we need to do everything that we can to oppose them, kind of to work with groups like Unite Resist Borders, to get on every demonstration, to make it very clear to our employers that and the government that we're not accepting any of it. We know that, you know, one of the union's primary roles is, you know, to show solidarity with our colleagues who are being impacted on, and we must do that in every single way we can. And, you know, how we enforce that, you know, is through, you know, threats to of action, through going on protests, through supporting every demonstration called, and by offering legal advice, obviously, but very, very strong representation from the union opposing any of the barbaric regulations or whatever they're imposing, not just within our universities and the education sectors, but out with as well, such as Bibi Stockholm, and, you know, kind of the forcing of refugees into these awful camps, and allowing them visas to work, etc. So we need to oppose this filthy racist government and, you know, whatever comes next as much as possible, and not back down in any way, shape or form. So maximum support for everyone in every which way that we can.
Thank you, Sarah. Vicky?
Thanks. I'm just going to put my timer on for this one. Okay. Yes, is the short answer is yes. I want to work with migrant members. I want to work with the Migrant Members Standing Committee. I helped support the work that established the Migrant Members Standing Committee, and I think it's imperative that we do everything we can to push back against the extremely urgent pressures and deadlines that we are dealing with for a lot of our migrant members, and that we recognise the massive financial cost and the massive amount of work you have to do in terms of administration just to work here in the UK, to not then receive all the same rights. And I think there is a lot of work that the Migrant Members Standing Committee has laid out that they want to do, and there are other groups that we need to work with as well to make this really comprehensive and much easier for both our branches to support members locally who are migrant members who are dealing with all of this, and also to make sure that that's inclusive in our messaging as a union. So, for example, if there's an FAQ about industrial action that goes out, it needs to be accompanied the same day by that detailed guidance for migrant members, not for there to be a wait for that to come through. And we need to be mounting coordinated campaigns around, for example, the immigration health surcharge, this barbaric recent set of measures that is seeking to remove the rights of people to have their family with them. We just have to do everything possible to support all of our migrant members and all of the migrants who we hope would be our members, but maybe don't recognise that support fully within the union as we present ourselves across FE and HE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have used all the time possible and available for the questions. Ewan, do you have anything to say?
I didn't answer that question. I mean, I can answer very quickly.
Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry,
It's okay.
I apologize. Sorry, Ewan. Go ahead.
So just really quickly, I mean, as somebody who's lived in several countries before, I want to see a world where borders are not, which they effectively are, prison bars across our planet, and we need to have a much more open world, and our education system needs to contribute to that. And we're hopefully going to have another government this year, which isn't going to be plumbing the depths that the current lot are. And the job of a union is to play a positive and proactive role in the political debate about bringing evidence about what we can do to be a more successful education service. So, you know, the fees that migrant colleagues face when they move to the UK, that they need to be rolled back. When we're talking about postgraduate staff, yes, the rules that say, for instance, that you can't bring your families now need to be looked at again, because it's just a cheap way to for the government to score political points. So all of this needs to change, and we need to be part of building an open national education service for the whole country, and set a model for the whole world.
Thank you, and apologies, Ewan, for forgetting you. Okay, so we have now discussed the questions. I think we have like 10 minutes left, really. So thanks again, everyone. Is it okay if we move to the closing statements? I don't know who wants to go first. Vicky, do you want maybe We go in alphabetical order this time. Is it okay? Okay, so this is 3 minutes each, right? Okay, so if you want to take a minute, just to relax a second, just we can. Don't worry. You start when you want.
Thank you. So thank you for having me again, and thank you for organising this. I'm going to finish on the note that we need to get really serious about organising and to reset our union culture and to make sure within our union's culture we have that full representation of every group. And I'd really like to ask you to look at my manifesto if you haven't already and look at the ideas I've put in there, including around supporting networking and self-organised groups amongst our membership as well. You can vote for change in this election. If you're here, I think it's because you are planning to vote. Maybe you've already voted, but you still wanted to hear what we had to say. But the single best thing you could do coming out of this meeting is to encourage everyone around you to vote, to use their preferences and to get their vote into the post. I'm asking for your first preference because I really sincerely believe we need an urgent shift in the leadership. And I have a lot of experience of organising from the ground up, from casualised postgraduate to branch president and as a UK officer in UCU. And I am independent of any faction, so my plans don't rely on electing any particular slate, but I am ready to work with everyone. And I think that's really important. We can meet the very serious challenges that we face, from AI to climate to what's happening in terms of global conflict. And we can win together in our workplaces, and we can contribute to building that better world through community organising, through practical solidarity. And so I will insist that our sector, post-16 education, is valued where our institutions are understood as cornerstones of our communities, of our local, regional, devolved national and UK economies. We haven't had a chance to speak very much about climate change in this meeting today, but I wanted to emphasise the importance of that and the importance of the work we do as educators in a just transition. I want us to value every part of UCU and use our unique footprint. We have roots in HE, in FE, in prison ed and adult and community ed. And that means we're really well placed to build connections and solidarity between members. So I'll build the infrastructure that we need to succeed and to have coherent political, organising and industrial strategy, and to cement commitments to equity and safety at the heart of our own practices and our workplaces and UCU as a workplace. I will make sure we get the data and analysis we need to drive action on pay conditions, equality and equity in our workplaces, and review and improve our legal support, including that dedicated mechanism for migrant members to access urgent advice. See disagreement as a basis for dialogue and deliberation for creative solutions and effective strategies, and ensure that we live our values by prioritising bridge building, both within our union and outside. I will amplify your voices and enact democratic decisions of the union. It would be a massive honour and a huge responsibility, and I will give you my all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ewan, you're next.
Again, thank you for hosting, and I really appreciate the 32 people who are left here after a couple of hours of listening to all of us. We're all here because we care about our union deeply. We care about UK education, and this vote for General Secretary is probably the most important in a generation for the course of our education sector in the UK. We've got a real choice. There are very real differences between all of the candidates, but particularly between the incumbent and the other candidates. And what I'm offering is a coherent plan, not more on Twitter, but a lot more good faith collective bargaining to rebuild our union and to transform UK education. We will get fair pay. We will get a multi-year deal. We will have a campaign, and we will win more democracy at work. We want majority elected governing bodies everywhere. We will put in place the structures for equality, including raising and equalising paid parental leave, including undoing the structural causes of the race and disability pay gaps and the gender pay gap as well. We will get written collective agreements in every workplace, and we will make sure that job security, including getting rid of the sources of casualisation, is secured. We will have job security everywhere. And I want UCU to be a model employer and also a model workplace. 100% clean energy at UCU, so that we can bargain with every university to make sure that all the endowment funds, all the pension funds are divested from fossil fuels, and make sure that we get 100% clean energy in every campus and every workplace. And we need to be part of building a national education service because we believe in universal public services. So our union just needs to get the basics right. That's the easy part. But we also need to start transforming the society around us. And the only way that we can do that is with the change of leadership. And then UCU will be a force for good again. Thanks very much. And make sure you vote.
You have another minute if you want, Ewan.
That's fine.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Saira?
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. I think what I represent is a real change in leadership in the UCU. One that does what members tell me to do while also offering a radical yet industrial strategy, but the only one that I think can work. Of course, if people don't agree with me, then through our democratic bodies, then I will do exactly what they tell me, and with good grace as well. But I think we have to be really serious about making these promises to end this, that, or the other, without actually thinking about how intransigent our employers are and what sort of fight it will take. I think it's all very well saying we'll end this, we'll end up and that, and we'll end this, but the question is how. And it's our members who do that, not the General Secretary. The General Secretary needs to offer support and to cheerlead the decisions made by our members. And actually, unfortunately, that I think that the only way we're going to win is through significant industrial action. You know, we have seen that, you know, when the employers tell us that it's not possible, we need to put pressure on them to make things possible. So, for example, you know, we're not going to win an argument or debate with them about the end of casualisation. We're going to have to force them to take it seriously by listening to our members and actually doing what they tell us to do. I will also be a General Secretary who is willing to challenge and to break the law if necessary. You know, where there are genocides going on, you know, I think that we need to say, well, if the law says we can't do this, that, or the other, we can't boycott, divest and sanction legally, then we have to break that law. If the law says, if the minimum service laws impact on us, we have to not only say we will support members who choose to not cross picket lines, but we will instruct our members to not cross picket lines. You know, we're in a world which is in huge crisis, and the same old tactics aren't going to work anymore. They're not working anymore. We have to change the whole landscape of what trade unionism actually means, and understand that it's our members who make the sacrifices, who get on the picket lines, who withhold their labour where necessary, who are able to change things. In addition, I will take the average wage of UC members' as salary. I don't see how a General Secretary is on £110,000 plus can really represent their members, and it's an act of solidarity. So vote for me, vote Vicky as preference too, and let's get rid of, so let's move forward as a union democratically. Thank you. Sorry for going over slightly.
Thank you, Saira. And thanks everyone for staying here till the end. So I hope this was informative and useful. So thanks to all the candidates. Thanks, John, for helping out with the chairing. And thanks everyone. See you soon.